Whoa, the best in the world is here for you, baby. The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star. And, let me tell you, so first off, yes, this is coming out on Thursday, not Wednesday. My apologies. So you're still getting your weekly Q&A. Don't worry about that. Just trying to get so much stuff done. You know how that goes. And it's all Sovereign Tech related stuff too. So, which is actually a very nice change of pace because, like I've said, 2017, wow, crazy ass schedule. So anyway, but yeah, coming out on a Thursday, but I take care of you. I got you covered. I deliver for you. So here it is. Wow. What a week. This kind of earth-shattering news announced, and I had quite a few people ask me about it, want to know my thoughts, because I actually have a special episode coming out this Saturday for Sovereign Tech Prime. I opened up the Q&As with your permission, patrons, which thank you. And of course, thank you for being patrons of Sovereign Tech, including the new ones. I know some new people just came on board. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you enjoy the hell out of all of it. And I'm sure you will. Because now, I don't think it's unfair. Literally, I think I can say there's now thousands of hours of content in the Sovereign Tech Patreon feed. To say nothing of everything else that comes out in that Patreon feed. But regardless, and thank you for everybody that's been using it. I've noticed quite a bit more use recently because, again, Patreon offers an entire platform, really. It offers an entire, there's social media aspects to it and everything, and it's just a great way to interact. So, okay. So the news that came out and that I'm going to talk about here, because, again, like I said last week on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode, I am opening up the Q&A segment again on Sovereign Tech proper for everybody to be able to ask a question. Now, I'll probably only ever be able to get to one or two, maybe even just one question per week on that, but I know it's one of the ways that like a lot of Sovereign Tech listeners really, well, shall we say, became really big Sovereign Tech fans, was because of much of what was talked about in the Q&A and all that, and where you get to control the show. So I want to, give control of the show a little bit more back to the everyday listener. So that's very exciting, and we'll be doing that. But this is one that got asked kind of both ways, by patrons as well as by people that wanted me to talk about it on the show. Now, I may end up talking about it more on the show as it progresses, because this is going to be a very interesting development to keep an eye on. And what we're talking about is Telegram's ICO. Telegram as in the Telegram Messenger, as in run by triple black wearing anarchist of the East, that being Pavel Durov, and of course also created by his brother, mathematical genius Nikolai Durov. And I mean that absolutely. That Nikolai is totally a mathematical genius, and often I think much of the technical brains behind things that go on with Telegram. So I'm going to talk about that. We're going to get into the Telegram ICO. We'll break down what that means. They absolutely are planning on creating an entire blockchain ecosystem called TON, the Telegram Open Network. We will talk about that. Then I got a question to get to about, well, I recently, and people have been really enjoying these, I've been releasing Sovereign Rewinds, which are classic Sovereign Tech specials that were pre-Patreon. So, the patrons, some of you are newer to listening to Sovereign Tech. Maybe you never heard these because they go back 4 or 5 years or whatever. And so I'm releasing those into the Patreon feed slowly. Well, kind of slowly. That way you have some extra stuff to listen to, and it's a good history lesson when it comes to Sovereign Tech. Of course, you don't have to listen to them. You don't have to listen to everything that comes out on Patreon. As I say this all the time, I have such a broad swath of interests amongst my patrons that there are things that I may talk about, whole episodes I might do that appeal to one segment of the patrons and not to the other. And that's fine. If you're not into the geeky stuff, well, don't worry. We'll get into the tech stuff. We're going to open up today's show with tech stuff. But anyway, on one of the recent Sovereign Rewinds, I believe it was the top 8 science fiction movies that I did, which was originally released in 2014, I talked about, the top 8 science fiction films. And one of the films on there was Metropolis from 1927. Widely recognized as one of the most influential and one of the original science fiction films of all time, or in history, I should say. And that one, some people asked, say, hey, you kind of hinted at, wow, there's some kind of weird meaning and esotericism involved in Metropolis. I hinted at it, and they said, we'd love to hear you talk about it. So I will talk about that after we talk about the Telegram ICO, and then we might be able to get into a couple of other fun questions that are here. But let's start talking about this Telegram ICO, because holy shit, this is poised to be the biggest ICO in history, which the plan is for Telegram. And Telegram, understand, what is it, like Telegram LLC or whatever? I mean, it is its own company, okay? Even though Pavel Durov, the Durov brothers, I guess you could say, it almost sounds like the Duras sisters, but no. The Durov brothers, even though they also helped create what's known as the Facebook of the East, still a very popular website, that being vk.com or Vincante, whatever it was originally called. But vk.com, very popular social media platform. Popular more if you're in Europe or Russia. And of course, the brothers Durov, if you couldn't tell by their last name, are Russian, though they do speak English fairly well. At least Pavel does. I've never really heard Nikolai talk. But anyway, Telegram is its own company, okay? So this is not related to anything. I mean, Pavel's pretty much been kicked out of VK anyway, and maybe that was for ideological reasons. Understand this, that Pavel Durov, I don't know about Nikolai, but Pavel Durov himself is absolutely an anarchist. He is like, your full-on market anarchist. I don't know if he'd call himself an ANCAP, but he's totally an anarchist, and when I say he's triple black wearing, I mean, he's just like me, where he's wearing all black all the time. This is a guy who, I mean, I don't know a whole ton about his, where he sits on a lot of issues within anarchism, because, anarchism is within itself practically an ideological anarchy where, people have all different kinds of ideas, which, I appreciate as long as they don't, not as long, but I can at least to some degree respect and understand as long as they're not interested in using force or coercive force through the state. But I think that that's a very important thing to keep in mind here, is that we are talking about an anarchist, and that ideological bent and bias comes with, I don't think that necessarily means you should trust somebody. In fact, quite the opposite. But it does come with, okay, this person gets it, that we need to get away perhaps from, coercive forms of control. Maybe. I mean, it doesn't mean just because somebody's an anarchist. Certainly, I've known plenty of people who call themselves anarchists that have no problem using the state, have no problem engaging in rampant fraud against individuals, including like-minded individuals, as far as anarchists go. And are just honestly, they're the scum of the earth, and yet they get wild praise from the bulk of the liberty-minded community, it seems. So there's no, again, and Telegram is a genuine success on its own, anarchy or not. And granted, there's problems with the encryption. I bring that up all the time. I'm fully well aware of all those problems, and that'll be part of what we talk about here. Okay. But, all that said, understand that Telegram, yes, is a success. But as Ayn Rand would say, success is no guarantee of virtue, meaning that just because somebody's successful doesn't mean that they actually did things right or ethically. Keep that in mind. I think we're, a lot of people, especially the free market flavor people, are too quick to say, well, they must be doing something right. No, maybe they're doing absolutely everything wrong. If they are, because the world, I mean, we live in such a fucked up society, kind of like I've said recently in some Patreon episodes. I think that, society in general is just so off base. Like, we are doing everything so much wrong. Look, society rewards, it doesn't reward healthy actions. I don't think it really rewards ethical actions. It rewards shitty behavior. Okay. I mean, most of the time. I mean, that doesn't mean that's always true either, but that sword swings both ways. Just because somebody's successful doesn't mean they're virtuous. Just because, just because something succeeded doesn't necessarily mean that it's a reward for shitty behavior. But either's possible, granted. So anyway, Telegram, run by an anarchist. Keep that in mind, okay? Telegram is, okay, so there's the massive problems with its encryption, okay, that MT Proto, and we recently talked about how they came out with MT Proto 2.0. I think now we kind of understand more of the purpose behind MT Proto 2.0, which what I said by my analysis was that MT Proto 2.0 was really just about being able to connect to other services. Well, that might be this, what they call TON, which is the Telegram Open Network, which is going to be the name of the primary blockchain. And I say primary, the primary blockchain involved with what Telegram is developing here. Okay. But MT Proto has very serious issues. It's a pretty hackneyed. How do you pronounce that? Hackneyed? It's a pretty ugly encryption scheme. Okay. Now, I appreciate that it's a new one and it needs to be tested, but even then, just looking at it at face value, there's a lot of problems. And you can ask many a security researcher that certainly has far more credibility than I ever could, just by virtue of they've been around, and they do not trust Telegram. This includes Steve Gibson, personal hero of mine, among many others. There are concerns where Telegram is, people are worried that they have worked with governments like Iran. I'm well aware of all of these critiques, criticisms, and potential problems. Okay. So we got those out of the way. Now, that said, okay, Telegram is still widely used, on the order of hundreds of millions of users. Okay, it's not Facebook. But as I've often said when mentioning Telegram, look, just don't bet your life on it. And we're not even getting into the secret chat aspect of it. There was already issues with that back in 2015 where it was storing stuff in plain text. I mean, there's real problems here. Don't bet your life on it, but it is a feature-rich platform that is not Facebook and will never be owned by Facebook, most likely. So, just use it. There's nothing wrong with using Telegram. Just understand the purpose behind it, or understand, what it should be used for. Okay, it is not to replace Signal. And Pavel Durov has had very real, he's had words with the notion of Signal. He doesn't think that it could ever be, it's always going to be a niche product and it can never be a mainstream product, which is exactly what he's trying to build with Telegram. So he has an interest in going mainstream. That's important. A lot of the mindset and attitude here is important to keep in mind. Because like I always say, I get the idea of follow the money. I think it's more important to follow the attitude, which is why I've been bringing up, about how Pavel Durov is an anarchist, okay? Along with, so when Telegram was created, here's the next point to bring up. When Telegram was created, Telegram made it very clear that they were never going to have ads on their platform, which I say, bravo, good. Ads are a very real problem. I don't think that I don't want to say they're unethical. It depends on what we mean by ads. I think there are some kinds of ads that are unethical, that are security problems, that are exploits, that are in a way a mental hijacking, amongst other things that I have real issues with as far as ads. Now, of course, Sovereign Tech has sponsors, but notice how I run those sponsors. Sure, I have a very, very simple ad on my website for them. They appear in the news at the bottom of the newsletter, and I might do a social media plug for them at points, and I do a live read for them. Okay, very basic. It's not something, I check my links and everything. It's not something where it could potentially harm you, okay, or where it's like this thing that, like a video that automatically plays, or that it's some kind of drop-down thing. I'm never going to do that. I'm not interested in that. There are very simple ways to let people know, that you have sponsors. There's very simple ways to advertise that do not have to, fuck with either a person's computer or their own head. So kudos to Telegram for saying years ago, and Telegram's been around for a while, for years ago, saying that they're not going to do ads. They said what they may do in the future, and they said this probably 3 or 4 years ago. They said they would consider, maybe creating premium features in a subscription model where you could get access to those premium features. I think, and this is important to bring all this up, you'll see why. I think that they're never going to do the premium feature thing, even though I would appreciate that, and frankly I'd probably pay for it. I mean, like with Reddit, okay, even though I don't use Reddit as often as I perhaps would like, especially our Sovereign Tech, I pay $5 a month to be a Reddit Gold member. So I'm willing, even if I don't use something a whole lot, if I know something is being very heavily used, then I'm willing to support it at the same time. I mean, it's very little different than Patreon, really. So, but I don't think that they feel they can do that. Let's get that out of the way. I don't think that Telegram, that Durov, the Durovs think that they can get away with charging some kind of premium model and it being enough to support the project in general. Now, understand, Pavel Durov is probably a billionaire at the very least a millionaire. I don't know exactly his net worth, but he is a very wealthy person because VK.com made him very wealthy because that was and is a very popular website. Okay. And he's actually probably right to have gotten out of it. I mean, even though he got kind of forced out by like a board of directors, it's probably for the best that he got out of that because Facebook's eventually going to eat VK's lunch. Like that's just going to happen. Even though VK has the advantage of not being a US-based company at all, that they can do a lot of interesting things with copyrighted material. So maybe they'll always be around, but they might become niche themselves. So anyway, this is a very wealthy guy, and he could probably afford to run Telegram, just off of his own wealth. He doesn't necessarily have to make money off of it, right, to do it. And I think that's basically how it's been running for the past few years because there's no ads. There's no premium model. How the fuck is this thing getting funded? Well, it's getting funded by the fact that he's a millionaire and he's eating the cost, I'm sure. I mean, maybe there's some kind of side businesses or something going on. I don't know, but I'm not aware of in any way that where Telegram is being integrated into the enterprise space, and being used as some kind of employee platform where they could charge for that or at least charge for support or something. I'm not aware that that's happening. So how does this make money? Well, I think that that's a very important question, and I think that that's a question that should be asked when we talk about the fact that they are looking to do, in 2018, they are looking to, Telegram with their ICO, and understand it's just a very, very basic ICO being built just like on top of all the other ones being built on top of Ethereum, which I think is bullshit. But their plan is apparently in the future to create their own, again, their own blockchain or blockchains, actually. We'll get into a bit of the technicals on that in a second. Okay. But they are planning to make $1.2 billion off of this ICO. It will blow away. What did Filecoin do? 250 million, which I think right now is the record. When was that? September 2017, something like that. So this will be the biggest ICO in history. Now, because of the name cachet that Telegram has, because of the amount of users that it has in all of this, I think it could do it. In fact, I don't think it's already started, but this month, January 2018 into February 2018, they are supposed to be doing a private investor round which is going to add up to 600 million. Okay. So, effectively like half of it, they want to be done by, institutional investors and larger investors. Okay. Perhaps whales even. And then they'll open it up to the public where you can buy in on this token. Okay. On the Telegram token. I don't recall if they had an exact name for that. They've already released a white paper for everything they have in mind. It's 132 pages. I have not read the entire thing, but I've gotten the gist. We'll talk about that. But now the question is, how is Telegram being funded? They want to make $1.2 billion in 2018. I don't think this is just way ahead of the gate before we even get into what they want to do. I don't think that it's unfair to wonder or ask or suppose that this could all just be a scheme to fund Telegram, and they'll never come out with with the Telegram Open Network. I don't think that that's unfair to make that assertion. Okay. I could almost believe it, that this is just a clever way with a lot of promises, because they are promising in 132 pages. You better believe they are promising a lot. And in fact, they're promising a lot of different technologies. They're promising a lot of different ideas without a lot of technical explanation of how they're going to do it. And that's a problem. Okay. But so, looking at that, looking at the white paper, looking at the fact of, the present model that Telegram runs off of. Yep. It is not, like I said, I'll say it again. It is not unfair to think that really all Telegram is doing is just finding a way to fund Telegram, the messaging platform itself, or the media platform itself. And 1.2 billion would probably do pretty well for it for a good long while. So maybe that's what's going on here. But let's say that it isn't. Let's say that they plan on creating Ton, which I think is a terrible name, by the way. Maybe they're going to call it TON. I haven't heard an interview yet. Maybe that's all they do want to call it. It's just TON, because just calling it Ton doesn't. I don't know. That's one of the worst words you could possibly come up with. So, but the Telegram Open Network, maybe I'll call it that, just so I don't have to keep saying Ton. The Telegram Open Network they have a few ideas involved. So the ICO, like I said, for this is is either going to start in the next few days, but it's starting in January, supposedly running into February. And then after February, at some point, people will be able to buy in. Obviously, there will be a lot of news to come out around that when people can jump on board with it. If you're asking me, am I going to invest in the Telegram ICO? I make it a point to not invest in ICOs at all. I want to invest in technologies, which is why I get excited about things like Zencash, where it's not an ICO. They start off, you buy in, and that's the end of it. Or not the end of it, but that's the start of it. So Zencash is a Sovereign Tech sponsor, by the way. This would, if I was ever going to invest in an ICO, this would be the one. Because, well, again, it's that reputation. And I've been, for lack of a better term, I've been a fan of Telegram for many years. Like, I get it. I just put it in its place. I don't recommend it not anymore. There was a time where I did, but I don't, it's just been kind of fuck up after fuck up as far as the encryption goes and how they've been handling that. But, I've been a fan for a little while. In fact, I used to get donations through, there used to be, what was it called, Telebit or something, where it was like a Bitcoin wallet built into Telegram. Because it's an open platform, you can do that, which kudos, that's great. I used to get donations that way. I don't really do that anymore. But I'm a bit of a fan, and I appreciate Pavel Durov for what he is. And this is one that I would if I were into an ICO. And I don't know. I don't know, because I'm kind of skeptical of what they have in mind here. Now, keep in mind also that their plan is with this ICO, and this is a bit different. Maybe there's other ones that are doing this, but maybe this is unique, where you will actually only get access to a certain portion of what you buy in the ICO. Okay, so when the whales come in, they're only going to get access to like not even half, I think, of what they purchase. Down the line, they'll get access to more of it. But basically what I think Telegram is doing is they're trying to create a financial environment where there's not crazy trading going on and crazy, valuations and all the stuff that happens with their own ICO. They want to control that ICO. And maybe this points to them being very serious about this. That, look, this isn't just some quick get quick rich scheme for everybody involved and for the early investors. This is something where everybody's going to be able to take part of it, even though there's an initial round of 600 million, which makes sense. You want to get, I understand like the reasoning behind that you want to get your big investors in initially, invite only. And that way that has proof of, okay, yeah, this is legit. If we can make half of it here, then, we can handle the other half with everybody else involved. So that part's not necessarily uncommon, and actually is a fairly common practice outside of the cryptocurrency world, or outside of the crypto world anyway. Or the blockchain space, maybe that's the best term to use, regardless. So, they're definitely trying to create a controlled financial environment. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. As soon as I read that, I totally understood what they were trying to do. Okay. And again, that might lend itself to that. No, this is serious. We're actually going to build something with this. And, you're going to have to hold for a little while until we can actually get real price discovery, perhaps, on what this Telegram token is going to be and be worth. Once everything comes, once all the different products that we plan on releasing, that being Telegram, comes out. So, and the first product I think that they have coming out is actually a wallet for the token. It's called the Telegram wallet, and I believe the plan is for Q4 2018 for that. But here's a little something that I'll read from a story on it. The company is planning to develop the building blocks for a decentralized internet that could eventually power decentralized apps, known as DApps, similar to what Ethereum wanted to do. Smart contracts, censor-proof websites, and more. The pitch includes 4 components, as we previously reported: distributed file storage akin to services like Dropcoin and ICO company Filecoin, a proxy service for creating decentralized VPN services and Tor-like secure browsing environments based on the blockchain, services for decentralized apps, smart contracts, and decentralized web browsing experiences, payments for micropayments, and peer-to-peer transactions. So those are some of the goals, again, within that 132 pages. And let's just call it what it is. I mean, this article kind of said it. They really just want to they're creating a decentralized internet. They're creating an alternate internet. Now, Sovereign Tech sponsor Zencash, I said to Rob Viglione, if you listen to the interview that I did with them on Sovereign Tech, or with him on Sovereign Tech Prime, I said, you're planning on creating a decentralized internet. And he said, yeah, he says, that'd be nice if that's how it ended up. I mean, they're doing one thing at a time, releasing one thing at a time and one feature at a time. And I think that, and kudos to Zencash for that. I think they're doing everything right, in my opinion, which is why I'm such a, I'm happy to have them as a sponsor, and I'm a proud supporter. And, and I have Zencash, I've bought into it because I really believe in what they're doing. So Telegram is kind of claiming to do very much the same, kind of the same thing, or at least the same end game involved. Now, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that because you know what? As I've been saying for years, literally years on Sovereign Tech, I want multiple internets. I want internets, not just one. I want a bunch of them. And there's no reason there can't be a bunch of them. You can have the Zencash internet. You can have the Telegram internet, or the Telegram open network, whatever. You can have all these different competing internets, and it's not a problem. Okay? Because at the end of the day, where, your accessibility to all of that isn't an issue of, but can the Telegram network, connect to the Zencash network or something like that? No, the end game is your device, be it your laptop, smartphone, whatever it ends up having to be, okay, that will allow you to connect to all of them. It's just like, it's like when people talk about the problems with Bitcoin. Oh, well, Bitcoin has this problem. Oh, it needs to add this in, needs to add this feature, needs to add this feature. When so many of those features could be added in at the wallet, not into the Bitcoin protocol itself, right? And that's the thing, is that your computer can handle the connectivity to all these different networks, and there's no reason that it shouldn't, and I think that that's fine. But regardless, anyway, aside from all that, so I don't mind that this exists in the abstract, okay? Like, I have absolutely no problem with that. Again, Telegram is planning on being able to do everything. File storage, so they're going to be able to do cloud services effectively. Censor-proof websites, okay, or censorship-proof websites. It's literally another internet that they plan on building, and they're building it on top of blockchain. Of course, it's another internet. Of course, they're not just building it on one blockchain. They make it clear within the white paper that there's a set amount, but that there would be there'd be one main blockchain, which would be the Telegram open network. But then within that, would be Ton, I guess, would be the main blockchain. But then there will be a bunch of they plan on doing side chains and baking those in, and those can interact at varying points and everything. The thing is again, like a lot of this stuff that gets laid out in the white paper, they're ideas that various companies are either have already developed or are working on within the blockchain space or the DAG space. I think DAG should still be considered perhaps part of the blockchain space, but whatever, even though it's a very different technology. We talked about that more last week if you want to listen to the Sovereign Tech Q&A, Patreon Q&A from last Wednesday. Okay, so that's part of what's weird in this, is that, they have a ton of ideas. There's nothing really revolutionary. Like, there's nothing unique necessarily that they want to do here. And they're just being very broad about it. They're just saying, we're going to use this. We're going to do this idea. 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 And yet they're not explaining how they're going to do it. And honestly, some of the ideas people haven't licked yet. They're working on it, but there's other, companies and development teams that haven't solved, how to do these things. I mean, even Bitcoin doesn't have sidechains and, effectively connected to it yet, right? Lightning Network's definitely coming, I think, but hey, it's not here yet. And I remember going to conferences back 2-3 years ago, and we were talking about, side chains are going to change everything. And I think even the price might have spiked at just the announcement of them, okay, for Bitcoin. But it took a while. And that's the thing, is that whatever Telegram has in mind, it might take a good long while to be able to, to implement it, if ever. And in fact, they could just keep saying that they're developing it, and I don't think anybody would really care or mind. But Telegram gets to walk away with its $1.2 billion anyway. And yes, I do believe that they'll be able to make that pretty easily. One of the interesting claims as to why, as to why they'd be able to make that easily and why people are, really excited about this. And I have I don't know where this metric came from, and I can't exactly find a straight answer, but the claim is by a lot of news organizations is that 60% of the crypto community uses Telegram. Now, I know, like a Cointelegraph, I can think of a bunch of different sites and some development teams that use Telegram as their, they kind of use it as their Slack, or they use it as a way to interact with readers, or they use it as a way to share stories, etc. And I've done that in the past too. I had a fairly popular dark Android channel on Telegram, but I just, I wanted to pare things down, and so and it was popular, but it wasn't really interactive. It was just like reposting stuff there, and come on, you can only post so many goddamn things. It gets so annoying. But anyway, so I'm kind of surprised that 60% of the crypto community is relying on something with very questionable encryption. It's hard to believe. I'm not against its use, but like to say that the really hardcore crypto people are using Telegram, I don't believe it. Most of the hardcore crypto people I know, they know that there's problems with Telegram. Again, they might still, I guess maybe they'd still use it. They just keep it in its place. But that's sort of an odd argument as to, and it is kind of weird for people that are supposedly really about security, that Telegram is such a major part of their day. You know, again, I'm a supporter. It's run by an anarchist. I think it's fine to use, but not when it, you know, if money and other stuff's on the line, I don't know that I would be using Telegram. So anyway, this is happening. The Telegram ICO is happening. I'll be keeping an eye on it. There are a bunch of different technologies, like so the Telegram wallet will be the first one. If that actually even comes out, maybe then this could be taken a lot more seriously. If you want to invest in it, I imagine you can make something back on that investment at some point. I think it's more of a long-term play if you plan on doing that, because again, they are going to hold some of the tokens for certain amounts of time. All of that gets laid out there. You know, maybe I'll put a link in the show notes that explains more directly about how the ICO is going to work. But I wouldn't plan on making money on that for at least a year or two. I mean, like nothing exponential anyway. Okay. And because it appears that they're trying to control, they're trying to keep a pump and dump from happening on release day, because that's sort of how a lot of these ICOs work, is that you buy in on release day, you know, and then you sell as soon as the opportunity arises, and you know, and then whoever didn't sell and is holding, you know, they kind of miss out on that moment. And so it's only get rich quick if you can buy a lot of it. But yeah, anyway, so they're trying to control that pump and dump situation, I think, which that might fail for them too. I mean, I don't know, maybe investors won't get excited because of the fact that they won't be able to do a very quick pump and dump and control, you know, come in like a whale and then, you know, out like a shark. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, we'll be keeping an eye on this. I hope it comes to fruition. I mean, bottom line, I hope that it exists. I have no problem with it existing. If they're using blockchain technology, I mean, that doesn't, you know, to answer the question, well, you know, how are they going to be good on security if, like, you know, since Telegram uses MT Proto, isn't that a problem, blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you're using blockchains, you can use far more solid, you know, security practices. Okay. So you don't have to rely so much on the scheme of, you know, of MT Proto. So yeah, I mean, this could be secure. I'm not really concerned about the security around it as a blockchain in general. I am concerned because I still hold this concern of, like, since they plan on implementing what are essentially side chains, the exit point and the entrance point from a side chain into the main blockchain, how do you secure that? There's no talk about that whatsoever in this white paper. Again, the white paper is really long, says a lot, but doesn't actually tell you a lot. You know, it tells you what they're going to do, but it doesn't tell you how. And that concerns me when I don't hear even an inkling really of a how. So I don't feel that that's there. But yeah, that's a problem, is that gateway. You've got to secure that gateway when you're coming back on chain. How does that work? And I'd love to hear their answer to it. I don't think they have one. But that's just a guess. I'm not knocking it. Like I said, I want it to exist. I hope it happens. I hope it becomes a reality. I wish all the success for any anarchist, real anarchist. And so, you know, I wish success for Pavel. I hope that this goes through. And who knows, maybe one day I'll be publishing Sovereign Tech onto the Telegram Open Network. That could happen. I am not opposed to that. And maybe they'll dump MT Proto, and they'll start, you know, running Telegram almost like BitMessage on the Telegram Open Network. That could be really, really cool. I could see a lot of really cool shit coming out of this. Okay, but understand that in the future that at least I want, and that I think for at least for a lot of people is going to actually be the future, we're not just going to connect to one network. There's going to be a multitude of networks. I'm going to connect to the Zencash blockchain or the Zencash network, you know, secure nodes and all that, which has already been a fairly good success for Zencash. I'm going to connect to whatever, you know, I'll connect to the Telegram network. I'll connect. I mean, I'll just choose which one to go on. And I don't think it'll be a problem, because what somebody will do is somebody will come up with like a blockchain browser that will automatically switch between all these, you know, different networks. And you say, well, then why not just have one network? Because having a monoculture of anything is a bad idea for one. It doesn't allow for innovation. It doesn't allow for top security. It doesn't allow for all kinds of problems. You never want a monoculture. Okay. Just like you don't want a monoculture in browsers either. You want Chrome and Firefox. You want to be able to choose and to try different things with different ones. Okay. So it's important that there is a multitude of these things, of these decentralized internets that are on their way. Whether it ends up being Telegram or not, if it's not Telegram, I know, plenty of companies that absolutely will make it a reality, and they're working hard on it. And they don't have the bullshit incentives that perhaps, something like Telegram might have. Okay, they've been making money at this from the get-go. So anyway, that's it with the Telegram Open Network. I thought that was, I think it's a very interesting story. No doubt about that, and it's something I'll be keeping an eye on more on Sovereign Tech. I would have talked about it in the main show, but we won't be able to get to it this week. So just to be on top of it, there we go. Boy, something else I won't be able to get to this week. Did you see Nintendo release? Was it Labos or Labos? Labos? It's like this cardboard that can take various shapes, and you can connect various aspects of your Nintendo Switch to it. Like there's a piano, you can put the Switch in it, and then this cardboard piano will play like a piano and all. Wild shit. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but we'll get into that in the future, and as more more details kind of come to light. But hot damn, is that that's crazy. I mean, Nintendo's having. Look, 2017, Nintendo's just having a killer year. 2018 probably isn't going to be any different. It's fascinating that they're kind of going in an opposite direction, or like a side direction of AR and VR. They're going in a more tangible direction, but it's still kind of it's cardboard. It's in your hand. Anyway, we'll talk about that at another point. But yeah, so supposedly through the holiday season, or through those various months, Nintendo sold. The Switch did gangbusters. They can barely keep them on the shelves. But amazingly, the 3DS, 3DS family, because there's the 2DS XL, there's the new 3DS XL, or the new 2DS XL, the new 3DS, but all that. In the U.S., it pushed like 750 million units. That's crazy for a system that old. In fact, it's the highest figure since like 2014. Nintendo's fucking killing it. Holy shit. I can't believe it. And the 3DS, that's a crazy success story on its own. That's just wild. I'm sure a lot of that had to probably do with my 2017 pick of the year for video games, which was Samus Returns, which came out for the Metroid game, which came out for the 3DS in September. But man, that's impressive as fucking hell. Wow. So anyway, okay, I said I would talk about it. Let's talk about, maybe we might not be able to get to our fun question later, but let's get into the esoteric. Let's have some fun, shall we? This is, I love talking tech. That's why I do a tech show. And I love talking, philosophy, all kinds of, I absolutely love talking the geeky shit. But perhaps my favorite thing, really my absolute favorite thing to talk about, is the esoteric, is the occult, is, all this wild stuff. Now, understand, okay, especially if you're somebody new, I am an anarchist. I do not buy into spiritualism. I do not buy into supernaturalism whatsoever. However, I do think that there are a lot of people, and there are people perhaps in positions of power, who do buy into that horse shit and who take it very seriously. So keep that point in mind in what I'm about to discuss here with a movie, Metropolis, from 1927. And Metropolis is one of those movies that has really stood the test of time, amazingly, considering it's a silent film. That it's actually stood up so long, is still widely studied, watched, enjoyed, appreciated, whatever. In fact, they keep finding new footage for this thing. The latest edition from Kino that came out for the Blu-ray is from a 2008 find of a complete version of the film, minus a couple scenes, which those couple scenes may have some importance. The two scenes being a specific fight, I believe, between Freder and the character Rotwang, and then the other is some preaching done by a monk which I think that might actually hold a lot of bearing. But anyway, if you have not seen this film, I definitely recommend you watch it. Do watch the 2010 complete edition of it. There's like fast food versions of it, out there, like from the 80s and everything, that are probably the most popular. And you can get a lot from that. But like the 2010 version has some odd, like a half hour of extra footage that people thought, would never be seen again. And even then, some of that footage is gone forever. But I'll save talking about that, in a minute. So, but understand, so this is made by Fritz Lang, which there's an interesting story to be told about Fritz Lang as well. But based on his wife's novel, Thea von Bohmen, her 1925 novel. Now, a lot of people don't even know that Metropolis was based off of a novel, from 2 years previous. And Thea von Bohmen, of course, also a filmmaker in her own right. She certainly helped out Fritz, her husband Fritz, with the creation of this film. Now, a little bit of history, and I wanted to also talk about that there are some not major differences between the novel and the movie, but there are a lot of extra things in the novel that are not in the movie, and they are all like totally occult, and like biblical, kind of references and everything that are within it. And I think that has some importance and bearing too in what I'm about to describe. Because as I said, I think this movie has some potentially, and I say potentially, I'm not saying that I know this for a fact or that I believe it 100% or something like that, but I could see the argument that this movie has a hidden point, a hidden reason for existing, for being made, and hidden messages. Okay. Not like, and I don't mean like subliminal messages either. I don't mean, or at least not like subliminal messages as you understand them. Maybe unconscious messages for people viewing the film, but not like, oh, they're controlling your mind or something. Not that kind of craziness. But let's just point out the gorilla here, and that is Thea von Bohmen was a Nazi. Fritz Lang was a Jew. His mother was Jewish, even though he was raised Roman Catholic and all that. His mother was Jewish, and in according to rabbinic Judaism, that makes you 100% Jew. If you're, it doesn't matter who your father was. If your mother was Jewish, it's passed on matrilineally. You are a full-on Jew. Okay, so keep that in mind. That Fritz Lang was a Jew, and his wife would end up now in 1927. Nazis weren't exactly a thing, but after this time, they would start their rise to power. And by 1934, Thea von Bohmen, who originally wrote the story, the novel, she would fully buy in, and she would take part. She was a full-on Nazi. Okay. Now, an interesting point is that, again, everybody knows, that the Nazis were, well, I mean, they're anti-Semitic, right? And they're either kicking out the Jews or killing them or doing whatever. An interesting historical point is that whether it's because of Thea von Bohmen's work or, her affiliation with the Nazis or whatever, the Nazis said to Fritz Lang, hey, we know you're Jewish, but will you stay with us? like literally the Nazis said, hey, Fritz, you can stay. And the reason being is because he was such a tremendous filmmaker. They wanted him to continue to make like state propaganda films, which his wife would continue to do, even though Fritz and Thea would get divorced. And because obviously Fritz couldn't stand Nazism, and kudos to him for that. So, but they did want him to stay to continue to make kind of propaganda films. And again, his wife absolutely did make those films. Now, later on, she would make claims that, well, she was only in the Nazi parties to try and help people of Indian descent. She'd claim all these humanitarian reasons why she had to work with the Nazis, but she never really did anything anti-Semitic with the Nazis or committed any war crimes or anything like that. That would be her claim. She still made propaganda films. She would later on claim that she stopped making those. She got tired of it. She couldn't do it anymore. She didn't like making the propaganda movies, etc. But bottom line being is she was good at it. She made them. And whatever level of forgiveness you want to give her or understanding or empathy you want to give to her, that is completely up to the individual. That is up to you. However, the fact that she was so practiced and recognized and hired to do propaganda films, one would assume is that she's good at it and that it's something that they saw in her and perhaps things that she did. And so that may point at the first kind of hidden reason, hidden purpose behind the story of Metropolis, behind the novel and film of Metropolis. And that is that it's a propaganda piece. for some kind of authoritarianism. Okay, because it was created, or the story at least was written. I mean, you could, say what you want about Fritz Lang, but the story was created by somebody who was all about propaganda. Now, so the point in saying all that isn't necessarily to point fingers at Nazis. Okay, not exactly. It's more to point a finger at the propaganda. Now, the second part that I need to bring up is that, again, remember that this was originally a book done 2 years previous, or, well, I mean, I don't know what the exact production time was for making the movie of Metropolis. It got released in 27, but, whether it took a couple of years, which I wouldn't be surprised, or less. I mean, I don't think movies really took that long back then to make. It's not like, when you had time frames in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and even the early aughts where, it would take 3-4 years to make a movie. I don't think that was exactly the order of the day back then. But anyway, you originally had the novel done by, Thea von Harbo, which was done in 1925, okay? Now, the major differences between the novel and the film is that the novel does extrapolate a lot more. There's obviously a lot more conversation because, again, it's a novel and not a silent film like the original film is, okay? But it covers, I mentioned this earlier, it covers a lot more, it brings up a lot more, shall we say, occult knowledge. And there's a lot of references, frankly, to Satan. There's a lot of references and almost twistings of biblical verses that are a part of it within the novel itself. And something to consider. Now, again, because Thea von Harbo ended up becoming a Nazi, and here's a supposition. I cannot say this with any kind of real certainty, and really the only hard evidence is her association with the Nazi Party, especially even early on with the Nazi Party. And that association would be to the Thule Society, which was absolutely an occult society, okay, and was one of the major sponsors for what was originally the Germans Worker Party, which would eventually become the Nazi Party, okay. And, I mean, these people were all about the occult, talking to aliens, Vril. I mean, it's crazy. And, as far as, who were members of the Thule Society, I mean, it's a who's who of the Nazis. Rudolf Hess, Alfred Rosenberg, Hans Frank, Julius Lehmann. I mean, just, plenty of people, Gottfried Feder. This is, for such an occult work, which I think the Metropolis is, to come out of an area where such an occult organization was rising into prominence, and I don't mean necessarily the Nazi Party, but its sponsor that helped the Nazi Party come into prominence, that being the Thule Society. I mean, it might be a tenuous connection, but it's a possibility. It's there. And granted, the Thule Society would be effectively disbanded before, well, actually, pretty much in the year, I think, that this book would have came out in 1925. Of course, not uninterestingly, there would be an attempt in 1933 to try and bring the Thule Society back, which also, interestingly, is, around within a year at the same time that Thea von Harbo would end up going full bore with the Nazis. Okay, so that may not all, there's a potential that none of that means anything. It's only valid because, again, the original Metropolis is loaded with occultism, and the book, like I said, I mean, the movie has its fair share, there's the Seal of Solomon on the door to Rotwang's, home, where Futura is. Futura is the name of the robot, by the way, that ends up replacing Maria. But anyway, so, that might not exactly matter. But because of the occultism, the point being, occultism was a major part of Germany at the time, of the elite, you could say, the aristocracy of sorts in Germany, and then, of course, would to some degree, or not just to some degree, but to a very real degree, be a part of the Nazi Party, though some people want to argue back and forth about how much of that was, was it based off of, occultism, or was it based off of St. Ignatius's, the Jesuit order or something, it all becomes a mess. Now, if you want to get some idea of what the book is like without reading the entire book, it was actually really well done. And it gives you a little more of the flavor of just how, dare I say, spiritually tinged, spiritually laced, or maybe even supernaturally laced, that the original story of Metropolis was. There was in '95, there was a like an audio production. It's kind of an audiobook, but it's an audio production that was done. That it was really well done. Like Forrest Ackerman opens it up and everything. It was done by 30 Year Radio Theater, and that I think you can get on Audible, and you can you could listen to that, and it's not even 3 hours. It's a little longer than the movie, but obviously if you listen to it on Audible or whatever app you happen to use, and you just turn up the speed to 2x or something, you can have that consumed inside of an hour and a half. And I listened to it when I was a teenager, and I thought it was it was really well done and certainly influential in how I like to do audio theater. Like there's long musical interludes and everything in it, and I think that's really, really slick. But that can give you a little more of an idea of what is in the book if you don't really have time to sit down and actually read the book, though I do recommend doing that. Now, when we say the occult, okay, this is a very broad term, and the occult generally just gets attributed to anything that isn't a part of the Abrahamic religions, okay, or maybe even some things that are considered heretical within the Abrahamic religions. Some people consider the Book of Enoch to be occult, or an occult work. So, and that's really the thing, is that when I'm going to use the term occult here, that I am meaning it in that broader sense. I understand there are things that get labeled as occult that are perfectly benign. There's nothing odd, nothing strange. In fact, it might even be helpful. Who knows? But so when I use the term occult, again, I mean something that is effectively a spirituality that is very, very much so anti-Christianity. So when we get into the movie Metropolis itself, okay, you are very quickly introduced to the caste system that the world is functioning under. You have the thinkers who live in this, amazing, well, that's hence the name Metropolis, that is very advanced, and, nobody has any want for anything. It's really nice. Even though when you read the book, there's money, there's all this different stuff, but the movie just makes it seem like a utopia. And they live there, and then underneath that is where the workers are that allow for the Metropolis to be what it is, to be the utopia that it is. Okay, and you very quickly run into the figure, the machine, as it's called, or in the novel they keep calling it the machine. That the movie actually compares to the god Moloch. Now, Moloch is synonymous with a lot of different, it's synonymous with like the Semitic god of, where they would pay at human sacrifice and everything. So all these workers going into that machine, just this kind of saying, and the book expounds on this to where, like 10 hours a day, or it's this maddening work that after enough hours and after enough time, just consumes the person or turns them mentally almost into, and somewhat metaphorically into a machine. And so, and that's what it takes. But anyway, Moloch is, synonymous with Baal, Baal, however you want to pronounce it, the bull of the sun, the whole thing. And that obviously, when you read, the Old Testament, when you read the Bible in general, Baal is considered one of the, this is the God that Elijah was taking on. It's representative of everything that isn't the works of God. And so you're already getting hints at that, this city is powered by, by Satan. The city is powered by the occult, effectively. Like there's already kind of hints at that of what it takes. Now, an important point should be brought up that this is not inherently a crazy idea. It's not a stretch to say that every quote unquote great civilization, and I put great in quotes, not because I think they're ethically great, every great civilization is built on top of some kind of slave force, be it Rome, even Greece, frankly, was. It just wasn't perhaps as standardized a trade as it would end up being in Rome, or that the cities would actually be built, because, this is, understand that the physical city of Rome, in ancient Rome, underneath it, like underneath the bathhouses, underneath the Colosseum, underneath all these different areas and buildings, to make all this magical stuff happen, or at least at the time what the ancient Romans would have considered, magical things to happen, you had entire slave societies underneath the city, and working underneath the city. You didn't see them, out of sight, out of mind. But that's what made everything happen. That's what made everything work in that city. They didn't have automation. They didn't have a lot of the technology that we have today. So they had entire slave forces that would build that up. One could argue in the South of the United States, one could make arguments there. Some people want to make the argument that we still live in a slave society, and just that, the slaves happen to have Medicare or have medical insurance of some kind, and so it's not so bad, right? And they have things to appease them. They have some bread and circuses or whatever. Now that's a point that comes up in Metropolis. Okay, I would quickly argue, just a fine point, that I think that a lot of Silicon Valley developing automation and machine learning and what they see of as AI, not so much AGI, but they see it as, okay, this is how we end up in that really great society where everybody gets to live in a lap of luxury by creating a slave force, like a machine learning / AI slave force. I don't think it's crazy that might be at least some of the tech giants and some of the tech companies' goals. Okay, because it does appear you sort of need that. Unless you come up with this amazing, replicator tech, unless it's like Neil Stephenson's Diamond Age, you have replicators and all this other horseshit, like something's got to be making everything go, somehow all that has to work. But this is how Metropolis genuinely functions, okay? And all of this, everything in the city was supposedly planned out and done by one guy. And that being, well, in the book, it's John Feddersen. In the movie, it's like Joe Feddersen. But anyway, we'll just say Feddersen, and he has a son named Fedder who is effectively Fredersen, not Feddersen. Sorry, Fredersen. And then he has a son that is effectively Fredder, which is his name, is effectively the main character, of this film. Now, Fredersen, interestingly, like one of the first times that you see him in the film, again, this is after you're seeing what the workers are going through and everything, he holds a compass in his hand. Now, some people want to relate that to, to Freemasonry, and that Fredersen is somehow like he's the demiurge, out of like Gnostic principles and stuff. I get those arguments, and those are certainly interesting ones to be had. Just because the movie has less occult references than the novel doesn't mean that they're still not there. Interestingly, there's even the opening credit to the film comes up like a pyramid, which would, it's kind of, I don't think it's unfair. I mean, I'm not going to say like it's Illuminati necessarily, though the arguments get made for that. Because there are one eyes in this film, which is, kind of the stock Illuminati symbol, right? And they do happen, and they happen with the characters that are causing all the trouble, like Futura that replaces Maria. She starts blinking she starts the whole one eye symbol later on in the film when she starts to cause troubles and rebellions and everything with the workers. Okay, but you have a pyramid going up, which might just be representative of similarities to Egypt, which, like we mentioned, how a lot of the quote great civilizations were built on top of slaves. Certainly, Egypt was one such case. Thus, the Israelites, right? So you have this pyramid going up, and when it opens up, it's as deep as lay the workers' city below the earth. So high above, it towered the complex named the Club of the Suns with its lecture halls. Now, I do agree. I think that is a kind of a thinly veiled suggestion of the concept of as above, so below. Okay, so again, that's more of that occult stuff. And as above, so below, this goes back to, like that's a Hermetic principle, or you might think goes all the way back to the times of, Thoth and, the Emerald Tablet in Egypt and all that, which that would fit, because if that concept is an Egyptian occult concept, then for it to be coming up in a pyramid, sure, fine, you have some symbolism there, okay? To say nothing of the, also, like I said, that you do end up with like the Seal of Solomon and the seal of like Pythagoras and everything. There's a lot of symbolism in this film, that was at a time where you didn't just put things there. Like at the time, the way movies were made in the 20s, you had to be very particular with what was allowed. There wasn't so much attention to detail unless it really needed to be, unless the attention to detail was totally necessary. Okay. It's not like filmmaking was super methodical back then, but if something was there, usually it had a point. Like you didn't just put, especially with a major film like Metropolis was, you didn't just put, I don't know, a potted plant somewhere just to like make it seem like there's greenery. You would be very, very particular in what you would lay out there. So anyway, so you have that opening, even before you see the workers, you get this, kind of what I think is an Egyptian, a call to sort of Egyptian mysticism that happens very early on in the film. And the next thing you know, we're talking about Moloch. So all that's there. Then you find out more about what's, you get into the plot and everything that's happening with Fredderson, and you find out what is the name of the building that Fredderson rules Metropolis from. It's explicitly called the New Tower of Babel. I mean, just straight up, it's just explicitly called the New Tower of Babel. Now, the Bible itself, which is, of course, where the story of the Tower of Babel comes from, right after the flood, what is that, Genesis chapter 11 or something? The Bible actually doesn't really say a whole lot about the Tower of Babel. It's one of, ironically, even though it's a very short situation, and of course that's a situation where, God confuses all of the, humanity's languages and everything, right, so that they can't work together. It's one of my favorite stories because I think it's so interesting in its implications, because what God says, and we don't know exactly who the hell he's talking to when he says it, but he says to somebody, he says, if we don't stop them now, while humanity's building the Tower of Babel, they'll be able to do anything. Now, the interesting thing there is that, taken at face value, that is God afraid. He's like, they're going to be able to do anything. We got to stop them. What? Wait, what are you worried about? You're God. And actually, shouldn't it be a problem because, you just saved their asses and now they're already trying to defy you? And of course, that's where supposition comes in, because depending upon who you ask, and probably the most popular resource that people would go to would be the Jewish historian, Roman Jewish historian, that being Josephus, who makes the claim, more or less, and others would do this too, but he's one of the originals, that effectively what was happening with the Tower of Babel was that humanity, after the flood, was afraid that if they continued to do what they needed to, or what they wanted to do, that God would flood them again. Even though supposedly, right, God promised, with the rainbow, God promised, I won't, I won't flood the world again, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe he would have said, I will not flood the world again. However the hell he would have done it. Non-existent thing anyway. But, the idea is that to prevent, from being wiped out again, they were going to build a tower so tall that no matter if God flooded the earth or not, humanity could survive, at the top of this tower. So that's the theory. Now, there's a million other theories around the Tower of Babel. You can get into Zecharia Sitchin's work where he says it was actually a launch pad. It was a spaceport, more or less. You can get into all that. That's fine, but that's not the point here. The point here is that the idea is, and what Maria kind of plays off of, or what gets played off of when the story of the Tower of Babel gets told again in the movie, which it does, okay, by the character of Maria, which is like this pauper, woman who is kind of a prophetess, or seen as a prophetess by the worker class. She's not part of the elites. She's not part of the thinkers in the above ground. She lives down with everybody else. So the claim is that, the suggestion is that with Fredderson having the new Tower of Babel, is that Metropolis is the city built to thwart either nature or God. It is something to thwart the ramifications, the vengeance perhaps of a God or whatever. Now, ironically, the novel has Fredderson and everybody in there being way more spiritual than they are in the film. There's tons of talk of, oh, God this, God that, God bless us, oh, I will reconnect with God, blah, blah, blah. Now, there's the chance that when they're saying God, they don't actually mean they don't mean Jehovah or Yahweh or, however you want to pronounce your tetragrammaton, that depends on you. Or Hashem, if you're more comfortable with that, we can say Hashem. But bottom line being, with Fredderson's, existing in the new Tower of Babel, the purpose of Metropolis would seem to be pretty clear. This is how humanity is going to survive. This is how they are going to achieve anything. This is perhaps, and when the book starts quoting Lucifer a lot more, or talking about Lucifer a lot more, there's not a whole lot of quotes from Lucifer, right? This is how man will be like the Most High. Meaning not like rolling up a doobie, but like God. Now, something that the movie misses that the book doesn't have is a lot of reference, or a lot of where Fredersen is, again, who's the creator of Metropolis, is saying that he is tired of the lack of efficiency with humans. Even the thinkers who are above ground, he's just tired of how they're working. And so he, at a certain point, so with the story, what happens is that his son, Freder, ends up seeing Maria, that character of Maria, who again is like, sort of the real hero of the story as far as somebody that was actually heroic. Like, she's this really empathetic person, and all of the workers really respect her and everything. And, she's making a claim in the beginning of the movie that one day somebody's going to come who's going to effectively set all this right. What's going on with the workers, because the machines are, again, practically literally eating the humans. It's so crazy. So there's a point where Fredersen is trying to find his son. His son has written him off and is, joining the workers and everything, falls in love with Maria. Again, you're picking up a lot of this in a silent film, which is kind of tough to do at times. So he ends up working with an old one-time friend and now nemesis, that being Rotwang, who's kind of this crazy guy. Now, even with Rotwang, and this is the guy that built the robot woman that everybody kind of remembers from Metropolis. Now, in the book, her name is Futura. That's the name of the actual robot, and the robot has a lot to say, and even has demands when it gets into the novel. But what's interesting is that with Rotwang, two things. One is that you get early on that Fredersen really knows that, like, humans can't handle this. Like, we need this either robots or a transhumanist future to allow paradise, that being Metropolis, to thrive, to continue on. Okay. So one could argue that there's very much transhumanist agenda here, and there certainly is, because now in the book, when Futura actually speaks, which she really doesn't when she's just in robot form, in the movie, Futura is very clearly saying that, find me a face, find me somebody to be, meaning that she needs to be joined with some kind of human. Like that it's not just raw machine, there needs to be some kind of joining. So there's a transhumanist message there. I think that's pretty clear. And look, before you say, yeah, but that's the book and this is the movie, no, they're hand in hand. And at the time, a lot of people, there's a reason that, like, novels were sold for films over the past 100 years. And that's because for a long time, a popular way to experience a film was you'd go and see the film once, because you didn't have you didn't have VCRs. You go and see the film in theaters, and then the book would be the way that you'd continually, like, re-experience the film. So they're part and parcel. They're not really separate entities at all, not at the time, and no book and movie were really at the time. Okay, yeah, selling the book is a marketing thing too, but at the time it was actually a very important aspect of allowing your movie to have continued relevance and really money-making power. So now the character of Rotwang himself, again, two things. One is that the door to his house has, effectively a pentagram on it, or, what could be considered. The pentagram gets used by a lot of different groups. At the time, that number is much smaller, because we're talking about the 1920s, before a lot of these different cults would rise up. Certainly there were cults then, but the pentagram is a very popular symbol for one of the, I guess you could say, OG cults that kind of stuck around, and that being the disciples of Pythagoras. So Pythagoras was a brilliant mathematician and human nut job that had some very, very strange ideas. I think that I would have to go in an entire exploration of the Pythagorean cult to really, like, explain the relevance and how much I think that Pythagoras has kind of brought to the table and how he gets venerated. I think he gets very much venerated in occult circles. One of my favorite things to point out is there's the really weird Disney cartoon with Donald Duck where he's teaching you the Pythagorean theorem, and it's like, why the fuck would you make that? Like, that doesn't even make sense. And certainly we could get into, and I've hinted at this in other Sovereign Rewinds, that, there's a lot of occultism within Disney's works. Again, please, I'm not saying I believe any of it. I sure as fuck don't believe in any of the supernatural aspects of it. Okay, I think there are people who do believe in it and who maybe do think that putting out these symbols and all this stuff actually means something. I think it's crazy people, but and it doesn't like actually have any kind of dark power or anything like that. All right, but it's out there. I mean, this stuff is out there. That's what I'm bringing up. So anyway, an argument could be made that one of the purposes of the disciples of Pythagoras was to create, what is considered the ultimate. And this isn't just for the disciples of Pythagoras. This is a part of occultism in general, is to create man, like create a new being. This would be the dream. I mean, the first, understand, the first person who came up with the idea of an android was a Catholic priest, or a monk, I should say, 200, 300 years ago. This is like the Mary Shelley dream, Frankenstein and everything. I mean, the power and where that stems from is that there is an argument to be made that the reason that Satan actually hates humanity is because it has a power that he doesn't have, okay, which is Satan can't create life, but humans, we can procreate. And so this is, old religious stuff. So Satan's dream, not necessarily humanity's dream, but Satan's dream is to create this artificial creature, okay, or to create this new life, right? And so Rotwang's doing that. Interestingly, so Rotwang has a couple things going for him. He has the pentagram, which gets associated with Satan often enough, but you can certainly Satan is really kind of an odd creation out of Christianity, not out of Judaism or anything like that. So that's a whole other. Oh man, there's so much history, really to explore here. Okay, but anyway, so you have the pentagram. Then you have, and this is a small one, but again, everything's intentional in this. Rotwang has a glove over his right hand, and his left hand, which he uses, and you can see it when you watch the film, he uses it to like scratch his head or his neck and to like make the motions that he's thinking. Is that representative of the left-hand path, which is what, the dark path or the path to Satan is called the left-hand path, right? So you kind of wonder, is Rotwang this Satan character, and who finally created Futura, that being the robot, all right, that ends up wanting to cause all this trouble. Now, interestingly, so for whatever reasons, Fredersen goes to Rotwang to really, he's trying to figure out what's going on with his son, who has disappeared and is, living among the workers and everything. He wants his son back. And Rotwang and Fredersen end up making this plan because he's saying, look, all of this is going to fall apart. We're going to run into all these problems. The workers are going to revolt, blah, blah, blah. We got to do something. And so Fredersen and Rotwang come up with this plan to replace the prophetess, that being Maria, which sounds a lot like Mary, doesn't it? Or, it's a form of it. But so you get that. Rotwang ends up capturing Maria and doesn't kill her, but gives Maria's form to Futura, to the robot, and then sends that robot down back to the workers, making them think that she's actually Maria. And her message changes dramatically, okay, as to where Maria was preaching peace and, love and harmony and all this different stuff. Suddenly, Futura Maria, I'll call her that, is preaching, honestly, she's preaching a lot of sexualism. There's like really erotic like dances that she kind of engages in. She's causing all of the workers to fight amongst each other. She creates like this rebellion starts happening and everything. What you find out is that Rotwang secretly wants to take over Metropolis from Fredersen. And this has to do with, like I said, Rotwang was at one point a friend of Fredersen's, but then it ended up not being, and that's because they both fought over the same woman, this woman named Hel. H-E-L. Not H-E-L-L, but better to reign in hell than to rule in heaven. Or wait, better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven, right? Anyway, so that's like the secret thing that actually Rotwang is trying to make happen, even though Fredersen thinks that they're working together and that they're trying to bring back Fredersen's son back to the fold, and trying to, get Metropolis back up and running, because Metropolis is, starting to run into some issues, and there's, the natives are getting restless, or should I say the workers are getting restless, and, a rebellion's about to start. Of course, a rebellion actually does start because Rotwang really wants to bring Metropolis down, and the way to do that and the way to take over is to get all of the thinkers thinking that Fredersen has lost control and Fredersen is wrong, and so we need a new leader, and Rotwang would be there to be that leader. And probably, even though this is guesswork, because the novel doesn't exactly say it, nor does the movie say it, is that Rotwang would replace the workers who would, just create this bloody situation, would replace the workers with his robots, right? Like Futura and all the rest. So, this revolution starts happening, etc., and Futura causes a lot of it because she makes the workers, in their rebellious fervor, against the thinkers, she makes them leave all of their children behind in the city below, which the city below ends up starting flooding after the workers destroy a certain building. But that has a couple of possible interpretations. One being that, again, Rotwang is going to replace the worker force with all of his robots. And so, you got to get rid of the workers and the children of the workers too, right? And then there's less people to have to worry about as well. Or it could mean that, like that part of the idea in this, one of the hidden messages that this movie is putting out is that you gotta separate the children from their parents. That way you can divide and conquer society and destroy the family unit, blah, 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 all that kind of bullshit. Anyway, eventually the workers realize what Maria's doing or what Futura Maria, the robot Maria, is doing, and turn against her, burn her at the stake. They realize that she's a robot, yada, yada. Freder and Maria, end up saving the kids and saving civilization, etc. Rotwang ends up dying, okay? And then at the end of it, what you get is this message. What happens is you have Fredersen, who survives all of this, okay? He ends up kind of like shaking hands with the workers. So what you get is this kind of unity between the thinkers and the workers. Now, the moral of the story here shows up in the last panel of the film, which comes up with the words that say, the mediator between head and hands must be the heart. And, what exactly does that mean? Like, does that mean that there needs to be, both sides are equal and that one needs to care about one needs to care about the other, vice versa, have empathy for each other? Like, what exactly does this message mean? Well, the best guess that you can get from the end of the film is that actually nothing really changes. The workers don't stop working. They don't get to enjoy utopia. The thinkers don't stop, enjoying utopia. Like there's no hint that any change actually happens. And so the argument could go that the entire message of this film is that, well, first off, it's a blueprint of how to create a utopia for the elites. Okay. And then how do you keep the workers happy? If the robots don't make it work or whatever, like how do you keep these workers happy? If you can't perhaps reach that transhumanist dream, or if the transhumanist dream shouldn't be allowed for the workers, it should be something allowed for the thinkers. How do you make that happen? Well, the idea is that you need to appeal to the workers' heart, meaning that you just need to entertain the workers. Okay, keep them satisfied just enough so that they'll keep walking into Moloch and they'll keep doing their, keep your little utopia that the elites get to enjoy happening. Okay. And that leads to what potentially the overall message of this film is that it was a movie made for the elites, just as Thea von Harbo and as Fritz Lang, the creator of, the director, we'll call it the creator of Metropolis, so the movie, he got offered to stay with them. They were charged with creating propaganda pieces of how the world should be. And so one could argue this is just a giant propaganda piece for how the elites want their world to be. You let us have our utopia, you'll be the workers, and somehow, we'll entertain you a bit, we'll have some kind of connection with you. And this plays into today, where since this movie has come out, and particularly in maybe the last 20 to 30 years, there are a multitude of references within pop culture, music, etc., where the character of Futura specifically is referenced and used. In fact, even whole scenes from the film, like kind of the erotic dance where, I mean, it's so funny because there's the point where Robot Maria, like they're doing a dance number where she is, called the great harlot of Babylon out of the book of Revelation. Right. And there's this whole scene where she's dancing and it looks a lot like, the scene from like Material Girl by Madonna from the video of that. Madonna's another one where actually at the end of the video, Express Yourself, it has a quote. It says, "Without the heart, there can be no understanding between the head and the mind." I mean, that's exactly the mediator between head and hands must be the heart. So there's a ton of, and she's not the only one. Look, I mean, it's a laundry fucking list. Go to Google Images or something if you must, and then just look up how many people, like type in musician Metropolis or I don't know, like something like that. And you're going to see tons of supermodels. You're going to see tons of musicians, actors, everybody all paying homage to this character of Futura. Even Freddie Mercury did it in the video for Radio Gaga, which is where Lady Gaga, by the way, got her name from, was that song. But it's a good song, by the way. I love Queen. So, and again, like I mentioned, there's a lot of the symbolism involved in it that has to do with, occultism, or what some people maybe more specifically want to, say is the Illuminati. But the argument goes is that, well, this is like the entertainment industry in general is all about being the heart that works between the head and the hands. And it's all to keep the hands satiated and happy while they never get to experience utopia. The one part of everything I just said that I actually do agree with is that, yes, it does not appear that anything changes at the end of Metropolis. That like it's just, great. So Freder, which is Frederson's son, who, again, Frederson doesn't die, so Freder doesn't exactly take over. Freder is this amazing, like ambassador between the workers and the thinkers. But of course, really, he just gets to end up being a spy, right? and gets to report to Frederson whatever the workers are doing. And, it doesn't end good, even though it's supposed to make you think it ends good. I don't think so at all. I think it ends with a very weird message. That is clearly alluding to large swaths of society, because the representative style of the entire movie is not about the individual. It is about entire swaths of society. Okay. So yeah, when it says hands, it means the workers. When it says head, it means the thinkers. I mean, especially when that's what the two, castes effectively are called. I don't think that this is meant to be some kind of like grand individual message saying, oh yes, inside yourself, the hand must, communicate with the head through the heart and all that. No, this is a civilization scale message being told here. So what does it all mean? Well, potentially, again, what it all means is that the entertainment industry is not here for the furtherance of art. It's not here for the furtherance of, the human condition. Which is a shame, because in my if that's true, I'm not saying I believe it, but, if myself, I think that art, poetry, I mean, these are like the very basis of what makes the human condition. Like they are the very basis of anarchism, which is the human condition. So, if it were being perverted, that's terrible, So that's the idea, is that the entire entertainment industry means when you go to the movies, when you go see Star Wars, when you watch TV, when you listen to that new album by who the fuck ever, when you read a comic book, when you read a book, whatever, or well, some books anyway, when you do all this stuff, you are just being you're being placated to continue to be a worker to allow for the utopia that the thinkers get to enjoy, that being Metropolis. Represented by Metropolis. And how do you do this? Well, you do this by, bringing to fruition the plans of Pythagoras, of the left-hand path of what the Freemasons planned on, blah, 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 blah. That's the idea of what Metropolis is actually doing, is that it is a blueprint of how you get to a society that can where the elites can enjoy themselves and it can sustain itself forever. And you even have your security policy with your son, who is somehow some great ambassador to the people below. Now, did any of that actually happen? Are we living in Metropolis right now? Is this how the world works? I could see somebody making that argument. One could even argue that Silicon Valley is just being Rotwang, and creating Futura and all of that. Like I I get those arguments. I really do. I personally do not believe that the entire entertainment industry is some kind of like occult thing. I also don't think that just because something's occult or anti-Christian that it's inherently evil. I don't think that. I think what was going on in Metropolis, if I were to believe the hidden message of Metropolis, of that it's a blueprint of how you get to this utopia, I think it's a movie that is incredibly short-sighted and has been shown in the past 100 years that it doesn't have to be that way for everyone to experience utopia if they want to. That's my opinion on it. Like, I don't necessarily, buy into that's what this is about. Now, do I buy into that maybe there are people who are actually trying this, that are treating it as a blueprint? Yeah, I think there are. I really do. I really think there are. I think that, in fact, originally a lot of the stuff I talked about, there is a missing episode, and it's because there was a technical glitch that made the audio pretty much unlistenable. The lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I, Brett Venato's School Sucks, and myself, we were going to continue Conspirathon. And the first episode was largely going to be more about Metropolis and everything. And we didn't entirely make all that episode happen. Okay. And I talked about quite a bit of this, but I have an overarching theory. So I talked about a lot of that in this, but I have an overarching theory that whatever was the driving force behind the Nazis is very much still around. One of the things we were going to talk about in it, and I think I might have talked about this on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode, is that like the work of Stanley Kubrick, which, a lot of people suggest are hinting at either that the moon landing was faked, which I don't believe that, or that there are some kind of, like with Eyes Wide Shut, that there's some kind of occult, organization that's running everything and it's taking our children, or whatever, or that The Shining has some kind of like hidden message. Some people say that has the Apollo code where it's talking about the fact that, the moon landing was faked, etc. I don't believe any of that, but I do believe that there is an overarching theory and that there is something that Stanley Kubrick was trying to tell us through a lot of different films. My theory is pretty much he's saying that the Nazis are still around and they are, still creating, at least in certain points, propaganda pieces, and that maybe to some degree they're still in some kind of control. I am open to that possibility. I don't, operate on a daily basis whether or not that's true, because whether it's Nazis or it's Trump or it's Obama or it's whoever, it's some authoritarian asshole that's ready to off whatever boogeyman population they want offed. It doesn't necessarily change anything if the Nazis are still in power. But I wouldn't be surprised if sort of that's what happened. I think there's a lot of fair evidence for that. One of the main points, within Kubrick's films, not to shift gears here, but one of the main points within Kubrick's films that I think points at it is the typewriter is a very odd typewriter that a lot of people point at in the movie The Shining, and I think it's. I feel like that's one of the hints, and there's a ton of them. Like, I'd have to do such a huge breakdown of the movie 2001 and all of that. That's a whole other fucking thing. Okay. And I'd have to rewatch them to make my point a little bit more. But like, I felt that was like a hint, because people point at it. I feel like that's a hint that, the Germans are running, or the Nazis anyway, are running the show. Like that they're laying out the script for what's going on. And one could argue that Metropolis is perhaps that original Nazi script, or at least that occultist or Thule Society script that everybody's kind of running off of, or that people in power, that some groups in power, because I don't believe that there's like a new world order other than the one run by Hollywood Hulk Hogan, which I'm a part of. I think that there's like a multitude of groups really that are vying for world power of a sort. And maybe one of those groups is using Metropolis as their blueprint. So there you go. That's what I think, or that's one of the possibilities of what Metropolis means. Again, don't hold me to it. Don't say, oh, this is what Brian Sovereign believes. No. Don't do that to me. I'm just telling you what some people interpret it as, what I think it could very easily be interpreted as, and a lot of the oddities and symbols and everything that's going on, that is there. There's something there. It's not just a simple film that has to, that has that weird message. Like there's intentional symbolism. There's very interesting ideas laid out in it. Like calling it the new Tower of Babel. Come on. Like that's the most blatant, where yeah, this is an occult work, or this is an anti-Christian God work, in a very real sense, which, keep in mind. So if the interpretation that I laid out for what Metropolis is true, that's bad. But like I said, there's a lot of things that are considered occult or even Illuminati that I don't have a problem with. They get attributed to it, but then try and prove it right. The Illuminati was a real thing, but the only Illuminati we can really prove is the one that existed, that was created by Adam Weishaupt, a couple hundred years ago or whatever. Okay, and what was the purpose behind that? Well, a lot of their stated goals weren't necessarily bad things. Okay, getting rid of religion, getting rid of the monarchy, all this. Okay. So it's tough because you really have to look at this. This is, like I said, if it ends up being how it's interpreted, or the interpretation that I laid out for you, yeah, look, that's terrible. Okay. Like no question about it. But a lot of times when you talk about the occult, or when you talk about satanic messages in films and all this stuff, like separate the Christian God from it. And sometimes it's actually not that bad. Like, it's like, oh, I see what you're doing. Okay. That's cool. But you got to do that. You've got to separate it from the supernaturalism of what's in mind. That doesn't mean that the people that are planning these sorts of things don't believe in supernaturalism. Like I said, of course they just might. But anyway, there it is. There's so much to lay out there. I could probably have spent 2 hours talking about all of it, but yeah, that's a potential meaning for the movie Metropolis. I admit that whether that's the interpretation or not, there is a lot of weird shit in that, and something was trying to be said that isn't exactly painfully obvious on the screen. Okay, and whether it's something that you can find more in the novel or whatever, maybe it's there. I've read it multiple times. There's a lot of ways I could see this being interpreted. There really is. It could, because the novel kind of ends off sort of with the hint that Fredersen needs to go back to his mother, which you don't really get that character much in the movie. Like Fredersen has to go back to his mother, not Freder, and that hell kind of forgives Fredersen. Like there's a whole lot more, and maybe the whole movie is about getting back to God, and it just got cut up in such a way that whoever was running things in Germany at the time in 1927, didn't want that exact message to be there. But like, that's why there's so much Satanism in it, not because it's an evil film, but because it's trying to get past that or something, or trying to show you how to get back to God and get your relationship with God right, because one could definitely take that message out of the novel as well. Okay. So a lot of different interpretations, but I'm open to that one, that's there. And a really great case can be made for it. Without the need for a lot of outside connecting tissue. But Thea von Harbo, she makes it a very, she just adds a whole meta level to what the hell this movie could possibly mean. She really does. So there you have it. I won't be able to, we're an hour and a half, so I'm not going to be able to get to any other questions. But I will, of course, I'll be back next Wednesday. So, More content coming out this week. Of course, it'll be got a great Sovereign Tech lined up and a great Sex and Science Hour. Again, please don't say I believe. Don't go around talking like I believe all this shit. Okay. Cause I'm not saying that I do, just saying that that's one possible interpretation. That's it. Woo. That's it. I will see you on the other side. Woo.